Welcome to Wife Secrets channel. We hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching. Have you ever had one of those nights where everything just felt perfect? The world seemed quiet, the air crisp, and the only thing that mattered was the bond between you and your big dog. Well, that's exactly what happened to me last night, and I can't wait to share the unforgettable experience with you. It started like any other evening, but little did I know that something special was about to unfold. You know, big dogs are more than just pets. They're companions, they're family, and they have this way of making every moment feel a little bit brighter. But what if you could take that bond to a whole new level? That's exactly what I did with my big dog last night. I didn't just walk him. I did something out of the ordinary, something that brought us closer in ways I never imagined. I'm talking about a night adventure that took us to places we've never been before, both literally and emotionally. At first I was unsure if I was even up for it. After all, it was late, and the idea of trying something new with a big dog that's already a little too energetic for its own good seemed risky. But then something inside me clicked. I thought, why not? It was the perfect night, and who better to share it with than my best friend. So we packed a few essentials and off we went, ready for whatever the night had in store, but things didn't go as planned. As we walked through the quiet streets, we stumbled upon something unexpected. It was a moment that took us completely by surprise. And in that instant I realized this wasn't just going to be another simple evening out with my big dog. No, this was something entirely different, something that would change how I see our relationship forever. What happened next? Well, that's where the story gets interesting, and you'll have to stay tuned to find out. Trust me. It's something you won't want to miss. Just know this. What we did last night wasn't just fun. It was an experience that I'll cherish forever. It taught me something new about my big dog, something that made me appreciate him even more. Stay with me, and I promise by the end of this journey you'll see why I'll never look at our walks the same way again. Are you ready to find out what happened? Because the adventure is just getting started, and I can't wait to share the rest of the story with you. As we ventured deeper into the night, the quietness around us seemed almost surreal. The usual city noise was a distant hum, and all that could be heard was the sound of my big dog's paws parting softly against the pavement. He was always full of energy, but tonight there was something different in his step. It was like he knew something was about to happen, something that neither of us could have predicted. I glanced down at him, and for a brief moment I saw a flash of excitement in his eyes. He was alert, more tuned in than usual. We passed the old park near the edge of the neighborhood, a place we had been to countless times before. But tonight it looked different. The shadows from the trees stretched longer, and the street lights flickered just enough to make everything feel off. It wasn't the kind of place I'd normally want to be after dark, but my big dog seemed drawn to it, almost as if he was guiding me. Without thinking, I followed his lead. As we approached the entrance of the park, I noticed something strange. There was a faint glow coming from deeper inside, something that shouldn't have been there. I thought maybe it was just a trick of the light or my tired eyes playing games with me. But then it got brighter, not like a normal light, though it was soft, almost ethereal, as if something or someone was waiting for us. My heart began to race. Was I just overthinking things, or was this something bigger? I stopped in my tracks, looking at my big dog. He didn't hesitate for a second. He was already moving forward, tail wagging, eager to explore whatever lay ahead. I, on the other hand, felt a knot form in my stomach. Something told me that if I went any further, I wouldn't be coming back the same way I left. But before I could make up my mind, the sound of something moving in the bushes caught my attention. My big dog froze, ears pricked, body stiff. That's when I knew whatever was ahead. We weren't the only ones heading toward it. The sound from the bushes wasn't natural, and it made my blood run cold. It was a rustling, like something, or someone was trying to stay hidden. My big dog, always the brave one, growled low in his throat, his fur standing on end. I took a step back, unsure whether to turn around and leave or press forward, but my big dog wasn't waiting for me. He took a cautious step toward the park's entrance, his nose twitching, ears straining to pick up every little noise. I tried calling him back, but he wasn't listening. It was as if something beyond me was pulling him in. I stood frozen for a moment, trying to make sense of the situation. Why did I feel like this was more than just an ordinary walk? What was this strange pull I was feeling toward the park? And why did it feel like the air had shifted, as if something heavy was hanging over us? I glanced back at the entrance, half expecting to see someone watching us from the darkness, but there was nothing, just the shadows and the flickering streetlights. I swallowed hard and reluctantly followed my big dog into the park, my heart thumping louder with every step. The glow I had seen earlier was growing brighter, but I still couldn't pinpoint where it was coming from. Was it just the lights playing tricks on me, or was something truly out of the ordinary happening? Then, as we reached the center of the park, the glow suddenly intensified, casting long eerie shadows all around. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. My big dog, usually so full of life, was now standing still, eyes fixed on something in the distance. I couldn't see what he was staring at, but I could feel it. Something was out there watching us. It was then I realized it wasn't just the park that was strange. It was the whole night, and whatever this was, it wasn't a coincidence. The air grew heavier, with each passing second thick, with a sense of foreboding. My big dog stood motionless, eyes locked on the source of the glowing light that had now expanded across the park. It wasn't coming from a street lamp or any ordinary fixture. It was something alive, something that seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. My L***s felt like they were made of lead, but I forced myself to keep moving forward, my feet dragging through the damp grass. Every part of me wanted to turn around to run, but my big dog, my loyal companion, was already steps ahead, completely transfixed by whatever lay ahead. The closer we got to the center of the park, the more unsettling the atmosphere became. The glow was no longer just light. It seemed to shimmer almost like it was liquid, swirling and shifting in ways that shouldn't be possible. My big dog's growl intensified, low and constant, his muscles tense and ready. And then from the corner of my eye I saw it, a figure, a shadow, not quite human, standing in the distance, almost blending into the trees. It didn't move, but I could feel its presence, a palpable weight in the air. My heart skipped a beat. I stopped in my tracks. I was certain the figure hadn't been there just a moment ago. Could it have appeared out of nowhere, or had I simply not seen it before? My big dog's growl escalated, a sharp bark, cutting through the quiet. And for a split second I thought about turning back. But before I could make a move, the figure stepped forward just a little. Enough to make me freeze in the stillness. A whisper reached my ears, faint but unmistakable. It wasn't a voice I recognized. It wasn't even a human voice. The words were hard to make out, but one thing was clear. It wasn't speaking to me, it was speaking to my big dog, and that was when I realized this was no ordinary night. Whatever this was, it had been waiting for us. The whisper faded into the night, leaving an unsettling silence that hung over the park like a dark cloud. My heart raced as I stood frozen, trying to make sense of what was happening. The figure had stopped moving, but my big dog, he wasn't backing down. His tail was stiff, his body rigid, eyes locked on the mysterious presence in front of us. I could feel a shift in the air, like the temperature had dropped a few degrees, and a chill crawled up my spine. Something was happening here, something beyond anything I'd ever experienced. Then, just as I was about to call my big dog back, the figure took a step forward. This time it was unmistakable. It wasn't a shadow, it wasn't a trick of the light. It was real. The shape was tall, cloaked in darkness, and its form seemed to shimmer almost fluid, as if it were made of smoke rather than flesh. I could barely make out its face, just the glowing eyes, pinpricks of light that seemed to burn right through me for a second. I forgot to breathe. But then, in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, it spoke. "He's ready," it said, its tone low and gravelly, like it was speaking from deep inside a cave. My big dog responded with a sharp bark, snapping me back to reality. I tugged on his leash, but he was having none of it. He pulled forward, his whole body trembling with anticipation. "He's ready," the figure repeated, this time louder. I could feel its gaze on me, but the words weren't for me. They were for my big dog. And then in a split second, the figure stepped closer and I saw it, its hand, or what looked like a hand, reaching out toward my big dog. It was long and thin, fingers elongated, each one ending in sharp claw-like tips. I didn't know what to do. Should I run? Should I stay? The question burned in my mind, but I couldn't move. Something about this moment. This thing in front of me held me in place like I was trapped in an invisible web. My big dog, on the other hand, wasn't scared. He leaned forward, growling even louder, but I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't afraid, he was eager. The figure's hand hovered inches from my big dog's head, and I felt a sudden surge of panic. I yanked on the leash with all my strength, pulling my big dog back, but it was too late. Before I could react, the figure's hand touched his fur and the world seemed to tilt. The park around us blurred, the trees, swaying unnaturally, the ground shifting beneath my feet. The air was electric, charged with something foreign and ancient. Then in the blink of an eye, the atmosphere around us changed. The soft glow that had filled the park began to pulse, growing brighter and more intense. My big dog was still locked in place, his body rigid, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. It was as though he was no longer the big dog. I knew the creature in front of us. It wasn't just communicating with him. It was changing him. I could feel it too. The hair on my arms stood up as a surge of cold swept through the park, sinking into my bones. It wasn't just my big dog being affected. Whatever this was, it was pulling me in, wrapping around me, making it hard to think. The ground beneath my feet shifted again, and for a moment I lost my balance. When I looked back up, the figure was gone, but my big dog, he was different. The gleam in his eyes was gone, replaced by something darker, something deeper, and as I took a step closer, I saw it a symbol carved into his fur, glowing faintly as if it had been burned into him from the inside out. My GHT tightened and a new wave of fear washed over me. Whatever had happened here, whatever this was, it wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. My heart pounded in my GHT as I stared at my big dog, who was now standing completely still, his body rigid, eyes glowing with an eerie light. The symbol burned into his fur seemed to pulse with a life of its own. I reached out a trembling hand, afraid to touch him, afraid of what he had become. The familiar warmth that had always comforted me in his presence was gone, replaced by something cold and distant. It was as if he wasn't my big dog anymore. Not completely, at least I backed away, my mind racing. What had happened? What had that figure done to him? And why did it feel like the very ground beneath us had shifted? Was this magic a curse, some kind of dark force at work? I had no answers, just a deep gnawing fear that something terrible was unfolding, something I couldn't stop. My big dog let out a low growl, but it wasn't the playful, friendly growl I knew so well. It was deeper, more threatening, as though the very essence of his being had been twisted. He turned his head toward me, but his eyes, those eyes no longer held any recognition. They were vacant, alien. My throat tightened as I realized that I wasn't just facing a mysterious figure in the park anymore. I was facing something that had already taken control of my big dog, something far more powerful than I could understand. Then, as if on cue, the air around us seemed to snap. The park, the trees, the entire world felt like it was warping and distorting, bending in unnatural ways. The pulsing light from the symbol on my big dog's fur intensified, casting strange shadows all around us. I stumbled back, my head spinning, and that's when I heard it. A voice, familiar yet distant, coming from my big dog's direction. "Don't be afraid," the voice said. But it wasn't my big dog's voice. It was darker, deeper, like something had taken over his mind completely. I couldn't make sense of it. Was it my big dog speaking through some dark force, or had he become a vessel for something much older? The uncertainty gripped me like a vice. In a panic, I tried calling his name, but he didn't respond. He didn't even flinch. He just stood there motionless, staring off into the distance like he was waiting for something I couldn't see. Suddenly, a sharp gust of wind cut through the park, and the ground beneath us seemed to rumble. The trees groaned, their branches, swaying violently as if they were alive, as if they too were responding to whatever dark energy had overtaken my big dog. The symbol on his fur flared up one last time, blindingly bright. For a moment I thought I was going to lose consciousness from the sheer force of it. But then, just as suddenly everything went quiet, the wind stopped, the trees stilled, my big dog's eyes returned to normal, his usual warmth, his usual affection flickering back in an instant. He blinked, looking around as if confused, and then turned his head to me, tail wagging. I rushed toward him, hands shaking, but before I could reach him, a voice whispered from behind me, cold and distant. "It's not over yet." I spun around, my stomach sinking. The figure was back, but this time it wasn't alone. Standing with it was another form, one that seemed to shift between solid and smoke, its presence even more menacing than before. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. My body was frozen just like my big dog had been moments ago. "Your big dog has been marked,"